Imagine waking up one morning to find your bank account frozen. The power grid has collapsed. Your social media feeds are flooded with breaking news, except half of it is fake, and you can't tell the difference. Across the world, cities are flooding, economies are crumbling, and governments are scrambling to maintain control. Sounds extreme? Maybe. But as we enter 2025, the world is teetering on the edge of chaos. Let's break down the 10 biggest threats that could shape, or shatter, our reality. 10. Climate change acceleration, the point of no return. They used to call it global warming, but let's be honest, that sounds almost cozy compared to what's actually happening. This isn't just about warmer summers or shifting weather patterns. Entire cities are drowning. Wildfires are turning entire regions into ash. Crops are failing at record numbers. And the worst part? We're not looking at some distant end of the century apocalypse. We're talking about next year. Let's start with Hurricane Otis, 2023. The Mexican coastal city of Acapulco went to bed expecting a manageable tropical storm. By morning, they were hit with a Category 5 monster that intensified faster than anything in recorded history. Meteorologists were shocked, because this wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. In the last 5 years alone, we've seen record-breaking wildfires from California to Australia, deadly heat waves killing thousands in Europe, and floods swallowing entire cities in China, Pakistan, and Germany. Remember Derna, Libya, in 2023? A storm dumped so much rain in a single day that 2 dams collapsed, sending a tsunami of water rushing through the city. Thousands vanished overnight. And here's the real kicker, it's accelerating. The domino effect, how civilization starts to collapse. Once upon a time, we thought climate change was just about bad weather. It's not. It's about the collapse of the systems that keep society running. Water shortages lead to crop failures. Crop failures lead to food shortages. Food shortages lead to skyrocketing prices, famine, and war. Look at Syria. Most people think the civil war was just about politics, but before the war, the country went through a severe drought from 2006 to 2011. Farmers lost everything, moved into cities looking for jobs, and suddenly, you had millions of angry, desperate people, the perfect recipe for civil unrest. Now take that scenario and scale it up. What happens when India's farmland dries up? When entire parts of Africa become uninhabitable? When millions from Bangladesh, the Maldives, and Florida realize the ocean is swallowing their homes? They leave. We're looking at the largest mass migration in human history, millions, maybe billions of people moving to where the water still flows, where food still grows. And guess what? Not everyone will be welcomed. If you thought the migrant crisis in Europe was intense, imagine hundreds of millions of people showing up to borders with nothing to lose. The billionaire escape plan. Now here's where it gets really interesting. While the rest of us are told to recycle and drive less, the world's richest people are preparing for climate collapse. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel, they're buying up land in places like New Zealand and Patagonia. Not vacation homes. Fortified compounds. In 2017, Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, bought hundreds of acres in New Zealand and even fast-tracked citizenship. Why? Because he and his billionaire friends know what's coming. Underground bunkers in South Dakota, remote islands in the Pacific, self-sustaining compounds with their own food and water supplies. The ultra-rich aren't planning to fix the problem. They're planning to survive it. Meanwhile, the rest of us? We're being told to reduce our carbon footprint while the biggest corporations on the planet pollute more in a single day than any of us could in a lifetime. Ever wondered why climate action seems to move so slowly despite the overwhelming evidence? It's because the people in charge aren't trying to stop it. They're hedging their bets. What's coming in 2025? So what's next? If 2023 and 2024 were just the prelude, 2025 could be the year things really break down. Massive blackouts, heat waves in Texas, India, and China already overloaded power grids. Imagine that at a global scale. The food crisis deepens, droughts in the Midwest, China, and South America are expected to slash crop production. Prices will go sky high. More Category 5 storms, more wildfires, more disasters. Scientists are warning that storm intensity is only going to get worse. Water wars begin. Already, countries are fighting over water rights. India and Pakistan? Already at odds over river flow. The US Southwest? Water disputes between states are escalating. Coastal cities face their moment of truth. New Orleans, Miami, Jakarta. How long until people are forced to leave? So, can we stop it? Let's be blunt. The window to stop this is closing fast. The Paris Climate Agreement? Not enough. Green energy investments? Still dwarfed by fossil fuel subsidies. Geoengineering solutions? Mostly experimental, some even risk making things worse. The real question isn't can we stop climate change? It's how bad are we willing to let it get? Because if things keep going the way they are, 2025 may be the year we officially pass the point of no return. And once that happens, there's no going back. 9. AI and automation, the job apocalypse. A few years ago, the idea of losing your job to a robot was a punchline, a far-off, sci-fi dystopia. Now, it's happening in real time. Wendy's is testing AI drive-through workers. Amazon's warehouses are running with almost no human staff. AI-generated news anchors are reading scripts written by AI. And here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. It's not just factory workers. AI is coming for white-collar jobs, too. Think your career is safe because you sit behind a desk? Think again. AI can write scripts, design ads, draft legal contracts, diagnose patients, and even make stock trades. Wall Street firms are replacing analysts with AI systems that process data faster than any human could. The simple truth is this: if AI is faster, cheaper, and more obedient than human workers, what happens next? A future without jobs? Welcome to the Great Replacement, not of people, but of workers. McKinsey predicts that by 2030, up to 800 million jobs worldwide could be lost to automation. Goldman Sachs estimates that AI could replace 300 million full-time jobs globally. By 2025, nearly half of all customer service jobs could disappear. AI chatbots are already handling entire call centers. And that's just the beginning. Truck drivers? Gone. Self-driving technology is already here. Warehouse workers? Amazon's robots are taking over. Fast food workers? Self-service kiosks and AI cooks are replacing them. And don't think white-collar jobs are immune. Journalists. AI is already generating news articles faster than humans. Doctors. AI can analyze medical scans with greater accuracy than radiologists. Lawyers. AI is reviewing contracts and even arguing cases in court. The terrifying reality? We're not just talking about job losses, we're talking about the collapse of entire industries. A new underclass, the useless human? What happens to a society where millions of people are no longer useful to the system? If history tells us anything, the ruling class doesn't just hand out free money. Governments claim they'll retrain workers for new industries. But let's be real, are millions of truck drivers, factory workers, and warehouse employees suddenly going to become AI engineers? Will cashiers and call center employees pivot to coding and robotics? Spoiler alert, they won't. In the past, every technological revolution created new jobs, but this time, AI is learning faster than we can adapt. There will be winners and losers. And if you're not owning the AI, you're being replaced by it. The utopian lie: will universal basic income save us? Some people say, no problem. We'll just introduce universal basic income, UBI. Sounds nice, right? Everyone gets a guaranteed paycheck from the government, no matter what. No work required. But ask yourself this: why would billionaires pay you to exist when they can just replace you? The truth is, those in power don't want an idle, well-fed population. They want control. UB isn't about freedom. It's about keeping the masses docile while the ruling class consolidates even more wealth. Think about it: if the government is paying your bills, they control you. Don't like a new policy? They can cut off your digital wallet. Protest too much? No food, no rent, no healthcare. The world's most powerful people aren't planning for equality. They're preparing for a two-class system, the ultra-rich who own the AI and automation. And the rest of us, struggling to find meaning in a world where human labor is obsolete. The rise of AI tyranny, who's really in charge? And here's where things get even darker. What happens when AI doesn't just replace workers, but starts running entire governments? China is already using AI to enforce its social credit system, monitoring people's behavior in real time and punishing them accordingly. AI-powered surveillance is spreading across Europe and the US, tracking every move you make. Military AI is being developed that can autonomously decide who lives and who dies on the battlefield. Once AI controls the economy, the workforce, and the government, what's left for humans? Obedience. And if you think AI won't turn against us, remember, it doesn't need to be evil to be dangerous. It just has to be efficient. If an AI system decides the best way to maintain stability is eliminating certain people, who's going to stop it? If corporations program AI to maximize profits, what happens when it decides human workers are an obstacle? If AI is smarter than us, what happens when it no longer takes orders? What's coming in 2025? Mass layoffs across every sector, no one is safe. AI-powered surveillance tracking your every move. A new economic order where billionaires control everything, and the rest of us fight for scraps. The rise of AI overlords running everything from stock markets to law enforcement. A world where humans are no longer necessary. And the real question is, will we control AI, or will AI control us? Because once it's in charge, there's no turning back. 8. Global water shortages, the new oil wars. For centuries, wars were fought over gold, oil, and land, but in the 21st century, the most valuable resource isn't underground. It's water. And we're running out. This isn't a problem for the distant future, it's already happening. 2018, Cape Town, South Africa, nearly became the first major city to hit day zero where the entire water supply would have been shut off. Sao Paulo, Brazil, faced a similar crisis in 2015, where water reserves dropped below 5%. Phoenix, Arizona, could run out of groundwater by the 2030s, faster if droughts continue. Even London, a city famous for its rainy weather, could face water shortages by 2040 due to rising demand and failing infrastructure. This is not just a third world problem anymore. But here's the kicker, water isn't just disappearing naturally. It's being hoarded, controlled, and stolen. The corporate takeover, who owns water? You might think water is a human right. But to corporations, it's a commodity. While cities dry up, multinational companies like Nestlé, Coca-Cola, and Veolia are quietly buying up water rights all over the world. Nestlé pumps millions of gallons from public water sources, bottles it, and sells it back for profit, leaving local communities struggling. In Bolivia, the water supply was privatized in the 2000s, leading to violent protests when people were forced to pay even for rainwater. In the US, private companies now control 15% of the country's water supply, charging up to 400% more than public utilities. Think about it. If a handful of companies control the world's fresh water, who controls life itself? And when crisis hits, who do you think will get access first? The ultra-rich. They're already stockpiling resources, buying land with private reservoirs, and even developing atmospheric water generators, machines that pull moisture from the air. Meanwhile, for the rest of us, the price of water will skyrocket. And when it runs out, people will fight for it. Water wars, when nations collide. History is full of wars over resources, but water is the most essential of all. And some conflicts have already begun. India and Pakistan have been at odds over the Indus River for decades, and as water levels drop, tensions rise. Egypt has threatened military action against Ethiopia over the Grand Renaissance Dam, which could control the Nile's flow. In Mexico, farmers clashed with the government over water being sent to the US, leaving protesters dead. This isn't just about diplomatic disputes. In some places, people are literally killing for water. In India, villages now post armed guards around their wells, because desperate outsiders are willing to fight for every drop. In Iran, water riots have turned deadly, as protesters clash with security forces over access to dwindling supplies. In Kenya, rival communities have resorted to violence to secure control over rivers. And in the US? Arizona ranchers are furious that foreign investors, from places like Saudi Arabia and China, are buying up American farmland just to siphon away groundwater for export. When water runs out, desperation takes over. And in 2025, we might see full-scale wars fought over who gets to drink. The future, what's coming in 2025? Here's what's on the horizon. Water rationing becomes a reality. Entire cities will limit how much people can use. The price of water skyrockets. Bottled water becomes more expensive than gasoline. Private corporations will control even more of the world's fresh water supply. Violence erupts as desperate communities fight for access. Nations begin clashing over rivers, lakes, and groundwater, leading to global instability. And the biggest question of all, who will have water in 2025, and who will be left to die of thirst? 7. Cybersecurity nightmares, AI-powered hacking. Imagine waking up, checking your phone, and seeing an email from your bank, suspicious activity detected. You try to log in, access denied. Your money is gone. Your identity is stolen. And the worst part? It wasn't some kid in a hoodie behind a laptop. It was an AI, a machine that cracked your security, bypassed your passwords, and drained your account in seconds. We used to think hacking meant a lone cybercriminal in a basement. Now, it's machines attacking machines. AI versus cybersecurity, the digital arms race. For years, cybersecurity experts played a cat-and-mouse game with hackers. One side built defenses, the other found ways around them. But now, AI has changed the rules. Hackers no longer need to spend hours guessing passwords. AI can break millions of them in seconds. Phishing scams used to be riddled with typos. Now, AI writes them with perfect grammar and human-like tone. Automated hacking tools can scan entire networks, find vulnerabilities, and launch attacks without human intervention. Governments, banks, and businesses are pouring billions into cybersecurity, but it's an arms race, and for every new defense, hackers unleash an even more sophisticated AI attack. And the stakes? Their life and death. Casino heist: how AI hacked Las Vegas. In 2023, cybercriminals pulled off one of the most bizarre heists in history. Target? A Las Vegas casino. Method? AI-powered hacking. But here's the crazy part: it wasn't the vaults or slot machines they broke into. It was the fish tank. The casino had installed a high-tech smart aquarium with internet-connected sensors to monitor temperature and water quality. Hackers exploited that connection, infiltrated the casino's entire network, and stole data on high-roller clients. If they can hack a fish tank, what else can they get into? Ransomware attacks, holding hospitals hostage. Now, imagine this: a hospital is running normally, until every computer screen goes black. A message appears: your files have been encrypted. Pay $1 million in Bitcoin, or the system stays locked. Doctors can't access patient records. Surgeries get cancelled. People die because life-saving machines are frozen. This isn't science fiction. It happened. In 2021, the University of Vermont Medical Center was shut down by a ransomware attack, costing $50 million in damages. In Germany, a patient died after a cyber attack forced an emergency room to turn her away. In 2023, hospitals in Britain, the US, and Australia were targeted, crippling healthcare systems. Cybercriminals don't need guns or bombs. They can bring entire hospitals to their knees from halfway across the world. And it's not just hospitals at risk. Imagine air traffic control being hacked. Imagine a nuclear plant being taken over remotely. Or imagine the power grid shutting down. The nightmare of a blackout, when the grid goes down. In 2003, a software bug caused the Northeast blackout, plunging 50 million people across the US and Canada into darkness. Now imagine a deliberate attack. A well-placed cyber strike could cripple the power grid for days, weeks, or even months. And without power? No internet. No banking. No water, no food supply chains, no emergency services. Hackers have already tested the waters. In 2015, Russian hackers shut down Ukraine's power grid, leaving 230,000 people in the dark. In 2021, the Colonial Pipeline hack caused fuel shortages across the U.S. East Coast. In 2023, multiple U.S. energy companies were targeted by foreign cyber attacks. If an entire nation's grid collapsed, society could break down overnight. And while you're trying to survive in the chaos, you might see a video on the news. A world leader declaring war. A CEO announcing bankruptcy. A billionaire confessing to crimes. But there's just one problem. It's not real. The future, 2025 and beyond. So what happens next? AI hackers will become more powerful than ever, breaking into systems in seconds. Massive cyber attacks could take down entire cities, hospitals, or financial institutions. Deepfake technology will blur the line between truth and lies, making information warfare more dangerous than ever. Governments and corporations will race to defend their systems, but will it be enough? And here's the most terrifying question of all: what happens when AI starts hacking itself? 6. Rising geopolitical tensions, the road to World War III? The Cold War never really ended. It just went underground. Now? It's back, but this time, it's not just the US and Russia. China is flexing its military power in Taiwan and the South China Sea. Russia is digging in for the long haul in Ukraine. The US is sending more weapons, more troops, and more money into global hotspots than ever before. The warning signs? Economic instability. Rising nationalism. Proxy wars between superpowers. We've seen this pattern before, right before World War I. Right before World War II. So the real question is World War III already in motion? Flashpoints, where the next global war could start. Wars don't start overnight. They simmer, until one spark sets the world on fire. Right now, there are 5 major flashpoints where that spark could ignite. Taiwan, the most dangerous island in the world. For decades, China has vowed to reunite Taiwan with the mainland, by force if necessary. The problem? The US has pledged to defend Taiwan. In 2022, China launched its largest ever military drills near Taiwan, simulating an invasion. By 2023, the US and Japan were openly preparing for war over the island. Beijing now regularly sends warplanes into Taiwan's air defense zone, testing its defenses. And if war breaks out, the US would be dragged in instantly. Japan? Likely next. Australia, South Korea, and even NATO? Allies would be forced to take sides. The result? A global conflict that could make World War II look small. Ukraine, a war that won't end. The war in Ukraine has already reshaped the world. Russia has lost tens of thousands of troops, but refuses to back down. Ukraine is fighting for survival, but Western support has limits. NATO is expanding, bringing Sweden and Finland into the fold, right on Russia's doorstep. Vladimir Putin has already warned that Russia won't accept defeat. Would he use nuclear weapons to avoid it? Some experts say yes. And if NATO gets directly involved? That's the start of World War III. The South China Sea, the next naval war? China isn't just focused on Taiwan, it's also claiming the entire South China Sea as its own. The problem? So do Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia. China has built entire artificial islands, complete with military bases and missile systems. The US regularly sends warships through the area to challenge Beijing's claims. Tensions between Chinese and Philippine vessels have already led to clashes at sea. One wrong move, one collision, and suddenly, we're in a full-scale war. The Middle East, the eternal powder keg. The Middle East has been a battleground for decades, but now? The stakes are higher than ever. Iran is closer than ever to building nuclear weapons. Israel is carrying out covert strikes on Iranian military sites. The US still has troops in Syria, Iraq, and other hotspots. And behind the scenes? Russia and China are backing Iran. Europe are backing Israel and its allies. If war breaks out here, it won't stay local. In January 2025, President Donald Trump implemented several significant policy changes in the Middle East, intensifying regional tensions. Lifting sanctions on West Bank settlers. President Trump rescinded sanctions imposed by the previous administration on Israeli settlers in the West Bank. This decision was made shortly after violent attacks by suspected settlers on Palestinian villages, resulting in property damage and injuries. The removal of these sanctions has been interpreted as a signal of the new administration's support for Israeli settlement activities, potentially escalating violence in the region. Suspension of U.S. foreign aid. The administration announced a 90-day suspension of U.S. foreign aid, affecting programs in the Palestinian territories. This move has raised concerns about the potential for increased instability and humanitarian challenges in the affected areas. Restoration of sanctions against the International Criminal Court. President Trump reinstated sanctions against the International Criminal Court, ICC, reversing the previous administration's approach. This action underscores the administration's stance on international legal bodies and their jurisdiction over U.S. and allied personnel. Resumption of U.S.-made bomb supplies to Israel. The administration resumed the supply of U.S.-made bombs to Israel, reinforcing the military capabilities of a key regional ally. This decision aligns with the administration's broader support for Israel amidst ongoing Middle Eastern conflicts. Skepticism about Israel-Hamas ceasefire. President Trump expressed doubts regarding the durability of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, citing the perceived weakness of the Islamist organization. He described the Gaza Strip as an enormous site of demolition in need of reconstruction, highlighting the complexities of achieving lasting peace in the region. Regional implications. These policy shifts have significant implications. Israeli-Palestinian relations. The lifting of sanctions on settlers and suspension of aid to Palestinian programs may exacerbate tensions and hinder peace efforts. U.S.-Iran relations. The administration's stance is expected to influence its approach to Iran and its regional proxies, potentially affecting conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon. Global alliances. The U.S. actions may alter dynamics with other global powers involved in the region, including Russia and China, who have historically backed Iran. As these developments unfold, the Middle East remains a focal point of international attention, with the potential for escalating conflicts and shifting alliances. The Arctic, the next Cold War. Literally. The Arctic is melting, and a new battle for resources has begun. Russia is building military bases on the Arctic Circle. The US and NATO are racing to counter them. China has declared itself a near-Arctic power and is moving in. Why? Because beneath the ice lies trillions of dollars in oil, gas, and minerals. And as history has shown, wars are often fought over resources. History's warning: the patterns we keep ignoring. If this all sounds familiar, that's because we've seen it before. Before World War I, global powers were caught in alliances, just like NATO and China-Russia today. Before World War II, economic crises led to the rise of authoritarian leaders, just like we're seeing now. During the Cold War, proxy wars raged in Vietnam, Korea, and Afghanistan, just like Ukraine and the South China Sea today. And every time, people said, it won't happen. The world has learned its lesson. Until it did. The final trigger: what could push us over the edge? It won't be a slow build-up. World War III, if it happens, will likely start in a single moment. A miscalculation. A rogue missile. A terrorist attack that spirals out of control. A cyber attack that cripples a nation's power grid. And by the time we realize what's happening, it'll be too late. 2025 and beyond, what happens next? The world stands on a knife's edge. Will we step back from the brink? Or are we already too far gone? One thing's for sure: the next war won't look like the last. It will be fought with AI, cyber weapons, drones, economic warfare, and nuclear threats. And if it happens, it could be the last war we ever fight. 5. The next global pandemic. Are we ready? COVID-19 wasn't the final boss, it was just the tutorial level. The next global pandemic? It could make COVID look like a dress rehearsal.
Scientists have been sounding the alarm for years about Disease X, a hypothetical pathogen that could spread faster, hit harder, and be deadlier than anything we've seen before.
But here's the thing: it might already be on its way. The new threats lurking in the shadows. Bird flu, a ticking time bomb. Right now, a highly pathogenic strain of H5N1 bird flu is sweeping across the world, infecting wild birds, poultry farms, and even mammals. In 2023, the virus jumped to humans in Cambodia, raising fears that it could mutate into a form that spreads easily among people. Historically, flu pandemics have been devastating. The 1918 Spanish flu killed over 50 million people. If H5N1 mutates into a human transmissible form, we could be looking at a similar or even worse scenario. Ancient viruses from melting ice. Climate change isn't just causing wildfires and hurricanes, it's unleashing viruses that have been trapped in permafrost for thousands of years. In 2022, scientists revived a 48,500-year-old virus from Siberian permafrost. While that particular virus only infected amoebas, it's proof that unknown pathogens could be lurking beneath the ice. What happens if a long-extinct virus, one that humans have no immunity to, escapes from the thawing Arctic? Bioweapons and lab leaks. The origins of COVID-19 are still debated, but what's undeniable is that high-security laboratories around the world are experimenting with some of the deadliest viruses known to man. In 2023, the US Department of Energy concluded with low confidence that a lab leak could have been responsible for COVID-19. And it's not just accidental leaks. Bioweapon research is still happening. Governments and rogue states have experimented with engineered pathogens for decades. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union had a top-secret bioweapons program that developed weaponized smallpox, anthrax, and even plague bacteria. If a deadly, lab-modified virus escapes containment, whether accidentally or intentionally, it could spread before anyone even realizes what's happening. The next pandemic, are we ready? COVID-19 exposed just how unprepared the world was for a global health crisis. Despite the lessons learned, we're still nowhere near ready for the next one. Vaccine development takes time. mRNA vaccines were revolutionary, but even they took months to roll out. What if the next virus mutates faster than we can keep up? Global coordination is a mess. During COVID, countries hoarded supplies, spread misinformation, and shut down borders without warning. Expect more of the same. Trust in science is at an all-time low. After years of conspiracy theories and government mismanagement, will people even listen if the next outbreak begins? The future, prevention or panic? Experts say we need universal vaccines, early warning systems, and stronger healthcare infrastructure. But those things take time and money. Meanwhile, billionaires are buying luxury survival bunkers in New Zealand. Biotech companies are experimenting with AI-designed antivirals, and scientists are racing to predict the next pandemic before it even starts. Because the real question isn't if the next pandemic is coming. It's when. 4. Deepfake warfare, the death of truth. We've all heard about fake news, but what if the next step isn't just a lie on a headline, it's an entire fake war? In 2025, deepfake technology is on the verge of becoming the ultimate weapon in global manipulation. With nothing but a few lines of code and some footage pulled off the internet, AI-generated videos can now make people say things they've never said, declare wars that were never planned, and create terrorist attacks that never happened. This isn't science fiction, it's the reality we're heading toward. The rise of deepfakes. Deepfake technology, powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning, has evolved rapidly in the last few years. While the technology started with fun apps that allowed you to swap faces in videos, it has since grown into a highly dangerous tool for misinformation. One of the first major cases of deepfake misuse came in 2018, when an AI-generated video showed former US President Barack Obama saying things he never said. The video was made by director Jordan Peele, and was initially a social experiment, intended to raise awareness about how easily AI could manipulate reality. But it wasn't just an experiment anymore. In 2025, such videos could be used to manipulate entire nations. The weaponization of reality. Deepfakes are not limited to simple videos. The technology can create entire fake narratives that shape the perceptions of a nation or a global audience. Imagine this: it's a few days before an important international summit, and suddenly, a video emerges of a world leader making a threatening speech against another nation. It's broadcast on every channel, shared by millions, and endorsed by trusted public figures. In this video, The leader calls for immediate military action. The video is so realistic that even the most advanced fact-checkers miss it. Countries across the globe panic. Governments start mobilizing troops. No one realizes that it's all based on a deepfake, designed to stoke tensions, spark conflict, and trigger a war. This is no longer just about a political scandal or viral rumors. It's the potential destruction of entire nations, all without a single bullet being fired. The 2025 crisis, AI and fake wars. In 2025, AI-generated content is so realistic that a fake terrorist attack can be orchestrated in mere hours. A terrorist group's leader might be shown giving a video message, pledging allegiance to a larger enemy. The shockwave of fear spreads across borders as intelligence agencies, without realizing it, respond to an imminent threat that never existed. In 2024, a high-profile deepfake video emerged, showing US President Joe Biden allegedly promising military retaliation against Iran. It caused immediate concern and fueled international tensions. Thankfully, a group of cybersecurity experts exposed the deception before it escalated further. But imagine what could happen next time. The real-world consequences could be catastrophic. The threats to democracy. It's not just about warfare. Deepfakes are also a threat to the very fabric of democracy. In 2025, political campaigns will likely be dominated by deepfake videos, creating false accusations, character assassinations, and fake endorsements. In India, deepfake videos during the 2019 elections manipulated public opinion, with videos showing politicians endorsing acts of violence and hate. It caused widespread unrest and, in some cases, led to real violence in the streets. Now, with the technology more advanced than ever, the potential for this type of misinformation is more widespread and more dangerous than ever before. The global fallout. And what happens when world leaders fall victim to a deepfake? In 2019, a deepfake video of German Chancellor Angela Merkel spread on social media, showing her allegedly praising the rise of a new authoritarian government. The video was quickly debunked, but in countries like North Korea, Russia, and China, where media control is paramount, a deepfake could be used to manipulate public opinion and solidify political control in ways we can't even fathom. But the real kicker? The disappearance of truth. People will no longer know who to trust. A leader might deny that a deepfake is real, but if people have already seen it circulating, what's to stop them from believing it? A future where truth is obsolete. Deepfakes are just the beginning of an era where reality itself is malleable. Already, AI-generated voices are used in financial scams, with hackers impersonating CEOs to steal millions. As the technology evolves, the line between authenticity and fabrication will continue to blur, and soon, we may find ourselves living in a world where nobody can trust anything. A new war is brewing, one where truth is the first casualty. As nations grapple with economic instability and nationalism, they could become more susceptible to these AI-generated conflicts. Imagine a nuclear power on the brink of war, manipulated by a video that convinces its government that a rival nation has just launched an attack, when in fact, it's all a manipulated illusion. The results? A world driven by fear, falsehoods, and fragile alliances. Who's pulling the strings? And who's behind this? The answer is disturbingly simple: anyone with access to the technology. Hackers, rogue states, political extremists, or even powerful corporations could use deepfakes as a form of digital terrorism. Think about the real-world ramifications. If an adversary can create a fake war declaration between two nuclear-armed countries, then all of humanity is at risk. In 2025, the question won't be whether deepfakes exist, they already do. The question will be, how do we stop them before they tear society apart? Because in this new age, the line between real and fake will no longer be clear, and truth could become just another weapon in the digital battlefield. 3. Global economic collapse. Inflation is spiraling. National debts are skyrocketing. The world's economic system is built on a house of cards, and 2025 could be the year it all comes crashing down. The global debt crisis. In 2025, the global economy is teetering on the brink of collapse, burdened by unprecedented levels of debt. The United Kingdom, for instance, is facing a debt death spiral, with annual interest payments exceeding £100 billion. This situation has led to concerns about the UK's ability to service its debt without resorting to higher taxes or further borrowing, potentially crowding out essential public services. The impact of political turmoil. The return of Donald Trump to the US presidency has introduced significant economic uncertainties. His threats to impose tariffs on the European Union unless they purchase more American oil and gas have raised concerns about escalating trade wars and their potential to disrupt global economic stability. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has warned of increasing fractures in the global economy due to these tensions. Rising inflation and economic fragmentation. Despite efforts to combat inflation, the global economy continues to face significant challenges. The World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2025 highlights concerns about economic fragmentation, rising debt levels, and geopolitical conflicts, all contributing to a bleak outlook for the decade ahead. Potential for economic collapse. The convergence of high debt levels, political instability, and economic fragmentation has led experts to warn of a potential global economic collapse. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, notes that the world economy continues to face significant uncertainties, with trade tensions, weak investment, and high debt levels weighing heavily on the outlook. Visualizing the crisis. As 2025 unfolds, the global economy stands at a precipice. The interplay of soaring debts, political upheavals, and economic fragmentation threatens to unravel the delicate fabric of international financial systems. Without concerted efforts to address these challenges, the world may face a crisis of unprecedented proportions. 2. Government overreach and digital control. Cash is dying. Governments want central bank digital currencies, which means they can track, control, and freeze your money at will. Dissent. Not an option when your social credit score determines what you're allowed to do. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, a double-edged sword. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are digital forms of a nation's fiat currency issued and regulated by the central bank. Unlike cryptocurrencies, CBDCs are centralized and can be controlled by governments. While they offer benefits like enhanced payment efficiency and financial inclusion, they also raise significant concerns about privacy and government surveillance. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has highlighted the need for careful consideration of data use and privacy protection in the design of CBDCs. The potential for these digital currencies to collect extensive personal data, including transaction histories and user demographics, poses risks to individual privacy. The IMF emphasizes that the design of CBDCs should balance the benefits of digital payments with the protection of user privacy. China's social credit system, a model for digital control. China's social credit system is a comprehensive framework that monitors and evaluates the behavior of individuals and businesses. Implemented through a combination of government agencies and private companies, the system aggregates data from various sources, including financial records, social media activity, and legal compliance. Individuals and entities are assigned scores based on their behavior, which can influence access to services, travel privileges, and even employment opportunities. In November 2022, China announced a new social credit law, marking a significant step toward formalizing and expanding the system. The law aims to standardize the collection and use of data, raising concerns about the potential for increased surveillance and control over citizens' lives. Global implications and the path forward. The development of CBDCs and social credit systems in various countries reflects a global trend toward digitalization and increased government oversight. While these technologies offer potential benefits, such as improved financial systems and enhanced public services, they also pose significant challenges related to privacy, individual freedoms, and the potential for authoritarian control. As nations continue to explore and implement these systems, it is crucial to balance technological advancement with the protection of fundamental rights. Public discourse, transparent policymaking, and robust legal frameworks will be essential in ensuring that digital currencies and social credit systems serve the public good without infringing on personal freedoms. The advent of CBDCs and social credit systems represents a pivotal moment in the intersection of technology and governance. While these developments promise efficiency and innovation, they also necessitate a critical examination of their implications for privacy, freedom, and the very fabric of society. The future will depend on how these tools are implemented and regulated, ensuring they enhance societal well-being without compromising individual rights. 1. Nuclear conflict, the final threat. The one thing that could end it all in minutes? Nuclear war. And with tensions rising, all it takes is one mistake. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: 2025 is going to be a wild ride. The return of the nuclear threat. Nuclear war, once an abstract concept reserved for history textbooks and Cold War documentaries, has become a real and present threat once again. Over the past few years, global tensions have escalated, and the specter of nuclear conflict looms larger than ever. Cold War tensions reignite. In the aftermath of the Cold War, the world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The threat of nuclear annihilation, once omnipresent, faded from the daily consciousness. However, as we enter 2025, it feels like we're on the cusp of revisiting those terrifying days of brinkmanship and existential dread. North Korea's missile tests, a glimpse into chaos. For years, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, has pushed the boundaries with his missile and nuclear tests. As recently as late 2024, Pyongyang launched several intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, into the Pacific Ocean, demonstrating its growing capability to strike the United States and its allies. The unpredictability of North Korea, coupled with its near-total isolation, leaves the world in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. In 2023, during a particularly volatile period of missile tests, the United Nations Security Council convened emergency meetings. But Kim Jong-un, seemingly unbothered by international condemnation, defiantly declared that North Korea would not stop until it had developed a nuclear deterrent capable of defending its sovereignty against foreign aggression. Experts warned that a small miscalculation or a provocation could lead to catastrophic escalation, turning a localized conflict into a nuclear war. Russia and NATO, a powder keg ready to explode. Russia's aggressive stance, particularly in Ukraine, has ignited fears of a larger conflict. Under President Vladimir Putin, Russia has not shied away from making nuclear threats. In early 2024, as Russian forces struggled in their occupation of Ukraine, Putin made veiled threats about using nuclear weapons to defend Russian sovereignty. The tension between NATO and Russia, both military powerhouses with nuclear arsenals, makes the risk of miscalculation dangerously high. A confrontation at the borders of Ukraine, or a military incident in the Baltic states, could escalate into a full-scale war with nuclear capabilities. NATO's defensive posturing, combined with Russia's strategic positioning of tactical nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad and the Arctic, raises the possibility of a direct nuclear exchange, even if both sides desire to avoid it. China's rising nuclear arsenal. Not to be outdone, China has made significant strides in modernizing its own nuclear arsenal. The Chinese government has repeatedly stated that its nuclear weapons are for deterrence purposes only, but experts suggest that China is building its stockpile of nuclear warheads with the aim of securing regional dominance in the South China Sea and beyond. China's assertiveness toward Taiwan has made tensions with the US and its allies palpable, with many wondering if Beijing is preparing to use nuclear threats to pressure the West into non-intervention. A potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan remains one of the most worrying scenarios for global security. If China were to act on its long-standing ambitions for reunification, the United States and its allies would likely intervene, and the situation could spiral into a full-blown nuclear confrontation. The Taiwan issue is more than a geopolitical conflict, it's a flashpoint where nuclear war could erupt in a matter of hours. The danger of miscommunication, the doomsday button. One of the most chilling aspects of nuclear conflict is the possibility of miscommunication or error. The doomsday clock, a symbolic representation of how close the world is to global catastrophe, currently sits at 90 seconds to midnight. This is the closest it's been since the height of the Cold War. The doomsday clock serves as a reminder of how fragile the balance of peace is, with missteps in diplomacy, military actions, or even accidents potentially triggering catastrophic consequences. Take, for example, the 1983 Soviet Union false alarm, when a malfunctioning radar system led to the belief that the US had launched a nuclear strike. Fortunately, the officer on duty, Stanislav Petrov, chose not to retaliate, correctly discerning that the alarm was a mistake. But what if he had acted differently? What if the system had failed during a time of heightened tensions, with no officer available to challenge the data? It's moments like these that show how narrowly we've avoided disaster in the past, and how easy it is for one wrong move to ignite a nuclear conflict. The nuclear arms race, 2025 and beyond. With the rise of new technologies like hypersonic missiles, cyber attacks on military infrastructure, and artificial intelligence-driven defense systems, the landscape of nuclear warfare is changing. In 2025, we may see a new generation of nuclear weapons designed for more precise, less destructive strikes, designed to prevent massive civilian casualties, while still sending a strong deterrent message. These new weapons could lower the threshold for nuclear use, making it more likely for countries to engage in limited nuclear exchanges. Countries like India and Pakistan, both nuclear-armed and locked in a long-standing territorial dispute, are also continuing to modernize their nuclear arsenals. The possibility of a regional conflict between these two countries, which would quickly escalate into a nuclear confrontation, remains a significant concern. The 2001 Indian Parliament attack, followed by the 2008 Mumbai attacks, brought India and Pakistan to the brink of war, with both sides threatening nuclear retaliation. Though diplomacy has kept the peace since, tensions remain high. Nuclear winter, the aftermath of detonation. Should a nuclear conflict occur, the consequences would be nothing short of apocalyptic. A nuclear winter, a concept first hypothesized in the 1980s, is the theory that the detonation of hundreds of nuclear bombs would release massive amounts of soot and ash into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and plunging the Earth into a prolonged, catastrophic winter. Global temperatures could plummet, agricultural production could collapse, and the world's ecosystems would be irrevocably altered. Millions, if not billions, would die from starvation, disease, and environmental collapse. The call for disarmament, a faint hope. Amid the rising tensions, there are still efforts to reduce the nuclear threat. International treaties like the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, and the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, have sought to curb the spread of nuclear weapons, but these agreements are increasingly seen as fragile. The new era of nuclear diplomacy is marked by skepticism, with nations like North Korea and Iran ignoring the treaties, while established nuclear powers like the US and Russia continue to modernize their arsenals. In 2025, global calls for disarmament are louder than ever, but they face overwhelming resistance. The growing power of nationalist movements and the increasing role of nuclear deterrence in international policy make meaningful disarmament seem unlikely. The hope remains that diplomacy and dialogue will avert disaster, but the reality is that, without real action, the specter of nuclear war will continue to haunt us. In the age of nuclear proliferation, the world's survival hinges on a delicate balance of power. As 2025 unfolds, the possibility of nuclear conflict seems as real as ever. Leaders, diplomats, and citizens alike must recognize the stakes and work tirelessly to avoid a future where a single mistake could cost us everything. The future is uncertain. But one thing is clear: nuclear weapons are the ultimate gamble, and the consequences of losing could be more than we can bear.